Hello friends, it's Christy Marcotte. Today I'm sharing some cards I made using Paper Rose's Nature Paper Collection. This is an A5 size paper. There's 24 sheets, 2 of each design, and they are single-sided. Paper Rose is based in Australia. They do ship their products internationally, but you can also purchase their products in the US. I will have links provided in the description box for both locations. I love how several of the papers have 2 different designs, so you could just cut that in half and get 2 different card bases. Now my goal with this paper collection is to make Father's Day cards. I bring cards every month to a local retirement home, so I'm going to need quite a few Father's Day cards. I'll also be using Paper Rose's On the Road stamp set. I love that image, and it has the Happy Father's Day sentiment, which is perfect. I think this paper collection will work great for masculine cards. It has a lot of the browns, but it still has that little bit of color with the greens and the blues. Now I've already gone ahead and stamped out this image. I did have to use my mini MISTI and inked it up a few times to get a nice solid impression. I'll cut down this image using the Tim Holtz decal trimmer. I like how it leaves that torn look to the edge. Then I'll layer this panel on some dark brown cardstock. Put some ATG tape on the back. And then off screen, I'll go and cut down the rest. Now this is a fairly large image, especially if you make American Standard A2 size cards. The image is about 3 3/4 of an inch by 3 inches. So adding that matted layer makes it just a little bit bigger. For the background of the card, I have this fun corrugated metal pattern, layered it on some more dark brown cardstock. Put some ATG tape on the back of the image and adhere it to the right side of that panel. I've already stamped out the sentiment, Happy Father's Day. I'll cut the left-hand side at an angle just for some extra interest. Before adhering it to the card, I'll add 2 small pieces of scrap cardstock to the left side where it goes off of that image panel, just to keep it at the same level. Then for a finishing touch, I'm using some Nuvo crystal drops. This is the Morning Dew color. It'll dry clear. So I'll add just a little extra detail. So there's my finished card. I did make a total of 4. When I was recording the card, I forgot to ink distress the edges of the image. I did it on all the other 3 and I do prefer that look. Now moving on to card design number 2, I'm using a card sketch. This is from MFT, it's number 542. For the background, I have this fun tree trunk pattern paper. It has a hint of teal in the background, which I thought is really fun. So I'm layering it on some teal cardstock and then again on some brown cardstock. Put my card front onto a card base. I cut out 3 stitch circle die cuts from that same teal cardstock. And I'll adhere them to the card, following this sketch fairly closely. Just putting liquid adhesive on the back to adhere those in place. Most of the cards in this video are fairly simple, but I tried to add some little extra details. Once I have all of those circles in place, I'll add a few little leaves. These are from Paper Rose's Autumn Leaf Outlines Trio. So this is one of the leaves. And I cut it out using some blue iridescent cardstock. I'm putting liquid adhesive on the back and adhering them on top of each of those circles, just alternating the direction. I love the pretty shimmer from that iridescent cardstock. And I'm not sure where I got this color. I only had a small piece left over, just enough to cut out 3 leaves. Now I do have to hold down a few of the areas just to make sure it's going to stay in place. I'm using Barely Art liquid glue and it does adhere great, but sometimes it takes just a little bit longer before it's fully attached. I'll be using the Happy Father's Day sentiment. I've already stamped this out, cut a fishtail on the right hand side and layered it on some brown cardstock, and I will be popping it up using some thin foam squares. I didn't add any of the foam squares where the leaf stem would go, just to keep it nice and level. So there is my finished card. I made a total of 6 this time. Used some different pattern papers and different specialty cardstock for the leaves. I was really trying to make sure that they didn't look like autumn cards, so I kept those leaves either that teal or a green color. For card design number 3, I have some diamond plate pattern paper for the background in this fun green color. I'll layer it on some green cardstock and then again on some black cardstock. I really like adding those double matted layers just for some extra detail on the cards, especially with a very simple design. So I'll put ATG tape on the back and adhere my card front onto a card base. And I don't want any of that white card base showing. Next, I cut out several different die cut pieces using Paper Rose's Cogs die set. I call them gears here in America. I use some specialty cardstock. I have black mirror glossy cardstock for several of them and then a rust color pearlescent cardstock. So using all that different specialty cardstock, they did take just a tiny bit longer to adhere to the card panel. So I am using my acrylic block just for that extra weight. There's a little bit of that rust color in the pattern paper, so I think using the rust color for the gears works really nicely. So I'll attach this black gear up here in the left-hand corner and then just the smallest black gear in that bottom area. So let that dry for just a bit, make sure everything was going to stay in place. Stamped out the sentiment, Happy Father's Day. I'll be using this one quite a bit. I cut the right-hand side at an angle and then adhered it to the card. For a finishing touch on the card, I'll add some black rhinestones. These have been in my craft room for probably over 10 years, so it was nice to pull them out to use a few of them up at least. I'll sprinkle them around the gears and also add one on the lower right-hand side underneath the sentiment. So there is my finished card, and I was able to make 4 using this card design. I made a very similar card when I used Paper Rose's Industrial Paper Collection. That one's great for masculine cards as well. For card design number 4, I have this fun distress pattern paper for the background. It has some lovely blues and greens. I'll be adding in a couple of the layering chevron border die cuts. This larger one has a pierced detail through the center and then the smaller one's plain. So I just used some solid cardstock to cut out both of those pieces, just trying to make sure they're matching the pattern paper background. So put liquid adhesive on the back and I'll adhere them to the lower portion of the card. It was not helpful that I added the ATG tape on the back of this panel before adhering those chevron die cuts. Sometimes I'm just not paying attention when I'm making these cards. I already have them prepped and I did it correct on the off-screen cards, but when I'm recording, sometimes I make those little errors, but it all turned out just fine. I did add a little more ATG tape just to make sure it's going to adhere to that black cardstock layer. I'll put my card front onto a card base, again making sure not to have any of that white card base showing. For the sentiment on the card, I'll be adding the word hello. Now I cut it out twice. I have it in that same kind of a light green tealish cardstock color, and then I also cut it out from some black glossy mirror cardstock. I'll layer the 2 pieces together so you can just see the peak of that green cardstock from behind. Since the background pattern paper is fairly dark, I wanted to make sure the sentiment still stood out. So I think adding just that little peak of the green cardstock really helps. Using liquid adhesive to adhere those 2 pieces together. It's probably hard to tell in the video, but that green cardstock also has a slight pearlescent finish. Now that I have all of my letters ready, I can adhere them to the card. And I decided to follow the pattern of that chevron die cut for the letters. So I'm alternating the direction of each of the letters. So the H will lean toward the left, the E will go toward the right, and so on. I'm trying to make sure that they're evenly placed above those chevron die cuts. So a couple more letters to adhere. Then for a finishing touch, I decided to add a couple of small circle die cuts. So for the larger, darker teal, I did trim off the edge, so it's going to be flush to the left. And then I'll do the same thing for that other dark teal circle die cut. I did pop that one up using a thin foam square, and I'll also pop up this last small circle. So there is my finished card, and I was able to make 4 using this card design. And by using the general sentiment hello, I can either stamp a Happy Father's Day on the inside or use it for another card occasion. For card design number 5, this one is really fast and simple. Have some fun distress pattern paper for the background, adding a stitched banner die cut from some green cardstock on the right side. I'll layer this panel on some dark brown cardstock. And there's some kind of script written on the bottom of that pattern paper. Put my card front onto a card base. And I'll be using that larger image from the On the Road stamp set. So I've already stamped it out. I did ink up the edges. Layer it on some brown cardstock. And since that image is fairly large, it does take up a lot of space on this card. Before adhering it down, I did add a scrap piece of cardstock to the left side where it goes off of that banner. Then I'll adhere it to the card, having it flush to the right side. And for this card, I decided not to add a sentiment to the outside. So I have the option of adding whatever sentiment I want on the inside. For card design number 6, have some more fun corrugated metal pattern paper for the background. It has that little bit of rust on the right side. I cut out this stitched strip using Paper Rose's Slimline strips die set. Put some double-sided tape on the back and then adhered it to the lower portion of the card. Then I'll adhere this piece on that rust color pearlescent cardstock. And you can see I did cut out the word hello from that background piece. I will fill it in using some scrap cardstock just so there isn't that noticeable dip on the front of the card. Put ATG tape on the back and layer it on some dark gray cardstock. I'll put my card front onto a card base. And I won't have any of that white card base showing. I think I only had the white card base showing on one of the card designs this time. So I cut out the word hello. This is from Paper Rose's Hello Large Layered Word Die. So it has the word and also the outline. I use some of the pattern paper for the word, and then I'll layer it on that rust colored pearlescent cardstock. I put liquid adhesive on the back and then adhere the 2 pieces together. And then I'll put my acrylic block on top to let those dry. Once that's all ready, I'll add some liquid adhesive to the back and adhere it to the card, having just part of the H and the L's on top of that stitch strip. For a finishing touch, I'll bring in the Nuvo Crystal Drops, the Morning Dew color. I'll add 2 in the upper left-hand corner and 3 drops in the lower right-hand corner. And those will dry clear. So I did make a total of 4 cards. I just used some different pattern paper for the other 2. I decided to leave this set of cards nice and flat. That way, if I want to mail it, I'm not going to have to pay any additional postage. Now here's a quick recap of the 26 cards I made using Paper Rose's Nature Paper Collection. This collection is perfect for so many different card themes. I did focus on Father's Day cards since I need quite a few to donate to a local retirement home. And I will add a handwritten message inside all of the cards that go to the retirement home. If you are interested in any of the products I used in this video, I do have links provided in the description box below. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.